Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christopher Steele. I'm a strategic director with Americans for Prosperity Foundation, and tonight's program is the Grassroots Leadership Academy presents Becoming a Watchdog. This is a very important program to help involve people in the governmental process and to seek out and rid our system of corruption. I'm about now to share my screen here so we can get our PowerPoint going here in just 1 second. One of the first points everyone needs to know about the government is that government belongs to those who show up. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who have never attended a rally, never gone to a protest, never gone to a government meeting. And by not going and not attending, you're making it easier for things to fall through the cracks. And we need to make sure that we're involved. Voting is a great step. We need to make sure that policy champions are getting elected, that the right people are getting elected. But oftentimes people forget that everything begins on election day. It doesn't just end. We need to be sure as the citizens to help to keep those people who we elect as our elected officials, to keep them accountable. And that only starts on election day. If they have made these promises, we have to make sure that they keep them. And part of that is making sure we're present and there. But what happens if we don't show up? Well, if we don't show up, there's a sad story that happened in the city of Bell, California. And this was exposed in 2009 and 2010 through a series of articles through the Los Angeles Times. There had been some anonymous tipsters out there, some watchdogs themselves, who found out that the city manager of this poor town in Los Angeles County, that the city manager and their other cronies in the government, the city manager was making $800,000 a year with a guaranteed pension of well over $1 million. And just to give that a little perspective, the president of the United States makes $400,000. So this city manager of a poor, impoverished city was making double that. A lot of the safeguards that people have had in place over the years to make sure that our taxpayer money and the like are being protected, well, those safeguards were just disregarded. And because people weren't there to show up, to be at the meetings, well, they went about and voted themselves huge 40-50% raises, raised taxes illegally, and we're stressing out a system in California that was already taxed very difficult in a big way through those times, making it even more difficult. And eventually they were exposed, some were jailed, and some didn't feel when they were caught that they did anything wrong. And that's why we need to be sure to show up, that citizen watchdogs just like us are at those meetings and in attendance. Well, I grew up in northern New Jersey, very close to New York City. And when I attended meetings when I was even in high school, even before a voter, you saw that there wasn't a lot of people who were there. And when you did have an opportunity to speak up, people would listen because somebody was actually there. It's why we need to be sure to show up. We always need to level set and understand what is the proper role of government. Well, the proper role of government comes to us directly from the Declaration of Independence, where it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the just consent of the governed." In its proper role, government is there to keep us safe and protect our rights so that we can then pursue things that are meaningful to us. But we need to keep an eye on the government. And that makes me think of one of my favorite passages in all of history from James Madison in Federalist 51, where he said, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external or internal controls on government would be necessary." We need to be sure that we're present. And if we are present, we're able to be aware of what's going on in our government, and maybe that gives people pause so that they're not stealing from those government coffers. Over the years, there has been a decline in investigative journalism. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, You had the Los Angeles Times being brought to bear on the city of Bell. And this is something that is a very good and positive thing. But over the years, there has been a massive decline in the amount of investigative journalism. Local papers are kind of fading away and going away, and even the ones that do continue to exist have smaller and smaller staffs. So and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we need to have citizen journalists who are aware. When you think about the years of investigative journalism, you think about in the early part of the 20th century, in 1905, Upton St. Clair's The Jungle was published, which gave had an expose of meatpacking and how disgusting everything was there, and helped to create the FDA. In 1974, obviously, I think the most famous with Watergate and with Woodward and Bernstein, showing that and exposing the corruption that was happening in the federal government with President Nixon. But with there being a decline, we'll talk a little bit the importance of being a citizen journalist and making sure that we're helping to keep those accountable and working with the media to hold those accountable. This is an article that came out recently in the Washington Post that shows that a government watchdog agency found that the Veterans Administration improperly approved nearly $11 million worth of bonuses for executives. $11 million of your money was just given to as bonuses to other executives. And had this watchdog group been not around, even in the government, well, we would have been out that $11 million, and that would be a tragedy. Here are signs to look for of potential corruption. Nepotism. Are people who are being employed by the government friends, family, business partners of those who are in government? Are they qualified for these jobs that they're having? Second, awarding contracts. Is there a proper bidding process? Does it seem to favor one company? And these are things that you can find, and we'll talk about in a little bit. There's FOIA requests. There's versions of that on the state and local level, so that you're able to look at this to see if they're getting those contracts improperly. Are officials living above their means? When I mentioned before, those in the city of Bell, California, you're making $800,000 as a city manager. You're living well above your means. And those who were caught were making no ways to hide this, and were very much showing that they were living above their means. It was very readily apparent there for anyone who was willing to look. Additionally, lack of transparency. Are the spending processes public? Are you able to see that? Is it available even on the website? Errors in missing data in financial reports. Does everything add up? Literally going through and making sure you can add up those numbers and then saying what they're supposed to equal. Was proper paperwork properly filed? Is there a lack of accountability? Is there a process already in place to hold officials to account? And is it independent? So these are different signs that you can look for. And I hope that you can drop things into the chat of maybe types of corruption you've seen in the past, or things that has been brought out that are very famous examples that you could share with Jason here, who's on the controls. Citizen watchdog successes. I want to give some one particular example of a really key citizen watchdog success that happened recently in 2017. After some digging, it was discovered that there was some money that had come from a government-funded venture capital fund in New York that was part of a larger corporate welfare program that gave out millions of federal dollars through a state agency that was called Empire State Development. And the person that was responsible for managing one of the venture capital funds just so happened to be at the helm of a failing tech company that had received a $500,000 cash infusion. It was discovered this official had awarded taxpayer money to 4 of their own companies, 3 of which were on the verge of insolvency, and 1 had already stopped operating. Thankfully, this was discovered by citizen watchdogs in New York and was able to be put an end to. But you see right there, they shouldn't have been in that position. And then they were in the position to give themselves those grants. These are the kind of things that are absolutely necessary for our citizen watchdogs to stop. So clearly, one of the big questions: what can you do about it? What can you do about it? Well, there's plenty of things you can do about it. Number one, you got to choose your focus wisely. If looking at this chart here, you see that in places like Illinois, Texas, Pennsylvania, California, there are thousands of government agencies around there. Looking at Illinois, number one ranking, there's 102 counties, over 2,700 sub-counties, and 890 school districts and other special purposes. That is 6,000, nearly 7,000 government agencies around the state. So if you're looking to say, I want to hold somebody, I think we need to hold these agencies accountable. I want to make sure that I'm doing this. Where should your focus be? Do you want to take on the state level? Do you want to deal with federal stuff? Do you want to be on the local level? And if so, on the local level, which part on the local level do you want to be a part of? You look at the smaller states like Alaska, Rhode Island. They don't have a lot of different agencies around there. And the purposes and small totals are dramatically smaller than even a place like Illinois. The first thing you have to make sure to do is establish your why. This here is the golden circle that is used in a lot of programs that we put on through the Grassroots Leadership Academy. And it's what's called the golden circle that was created by a man named Simon Sinek. And he talks about how oftentimes people don't talk about why they do it, they talk about what they do. And ultimately people will follow you and listen to you if you talk about your why. What is the thing that's inspiring you? What is the thing that helped you get out of bed in this morning that made you say, I want to stop the bad things that are happening in the government? What is that why? So if your why is, I want to defend those who can't defend themselves. I want to stop reckless and wasteful spending. I want to stop illegal and immoral activity. I want to stop government nepotism and corporate welfare. That's what you have to lead with, but you have to find out what that why is instead of just saying the what. Well, they're wasting taxpayer money. That's good, but why do you care? Because when you have a good why, you're able to inspire other people around you to take action with you. One of the great things that you can do in a grassroots movement is, if you're the leader of that movement in your local community, turns out you can't do everything yourself. You need a movement. You need a group of people to help you. And there's going to be some people who want to be out in front, who are comfortable talking to the media, who love being on social media. There's so many different jobs. It's what's called the snowflake model, the snowflake management model. And you have to put people in the right jobs that even help inspire them and where they can feel that they can reach out and do the best. Well, you may find somebody who says, gosh, I want to take action. I want to stop reckless and wasteful spending. I hate that the government is wasting my hard-earned taxpayer money, or I want to stop that illegal, immoral activity, but I don't want to be involved in that way in the front. But if this is a person who says, I love an Excel sheet, I love going through those things and finding that minutia, that could be somebody who's going to be on your watchdog team to keep an eye on those things, to look through those reports and to find that, and then to work with other people within your movement here to build out your movement and to establish, if you want to, a local watchdog group or whatever you want to call that, so that they have a better understanding of, or the government has an understanding that there are people out there who are watching us, coming to meetings, and certainly being a part of that. Be a watchdog with humility. Be a watchdog with humility. You need to be civil and fair, even when those who you're trying to expose aren't. You need to make sure that you have your facts absolutely straight when you're talking about anyone, especially a public person. You need to check your facts and check your facts again and check them a third time just to be sure. You need to be open to challenge to your own organization or to people who are bringing this up and correct your mistakes. We got to make sure, if we're going public and saying this person has done this, you have to be 100% sure that that is what is actually happening and that it's not something that you're wrong about or you're making a good guess on. And you also got to leave gossip and personality quirks at the door. You got to make sure that if this is a fact, not hearsay, not gossip, That's why we need those hard and fast facts to say this is where we found this particular thing, and that was what was being said at this meeting. There needs to be documentation provided so that when you're bringing that to the media, that they're ready to go public with something that they know you have gone out and checked your facts. Warren Buffett has a fantastic quote about this to keep in mind. It takes 20 years for you to build your reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So you can have a great reputation in your town, in your locality, for somebody who's being an honest, straight shooter, but you went with the gossip, you didn't verify the facts, you didn't do all those things that you needed to do before you brought it to the news media or to the authorities, whoever you need to bring it to. And if that didn't happen, then you could ruin your whole reputation. It could be over in a blink of an eye. You need to make sure the facts are there and they're straight. A watchdog with humility. You can be wrong. You don't want to be wrong. We got to make sure that we have all those facts completely right. One of the things you can absolutely do, attend public meetings. Just be there. Be there to listen. These things should be out in a newspaper. They should be out on a website to say when your public meeting is happening. When is your local city council meeting, your board of supervisor meeting happening? You can go there and be there and attend. There are going to be some closed door meetings, but for the most part, when there's a public meeting, you should be allowed to be there. And if they're saying you can't be, that could be a red flag too about a lack of transparency. Go to those meetings. Get to know the other people who are showing up. Get to know your elected officials. Not everything has to be an adversarial relationship. You want to be able to meet people, understand them. Why are they coming to these meetings? Why? Again, finding out everyone's why, going back to what Simon Sinek mentioned. Why did this person even decide to run for office? Somebody on the very local level. In my town when I was growing up, you were making $5,000 if you were on the city council and $7,500 if you were the mayor. So they weren't out there to be rich. Again, you could see if somebody was getting rich that there would be something wrong there. But if you're looking at those people, most people just want to be good citizens and help in the way that they can. But you can be there on that scene and attending those meetings. They happen fairly regularly, maybe the second Tuesday of the month or what have you. Attend those meetings and be a part of what's going on here. Be an advocate for transparency standards. There's a great group out in Illinois, the Illinois Policy Institute, that came up with a list of 10 things to show how high your transparency standards are. And this is something that could be, are budgets easily available? Are there open meeting laws? That laws not only showing that meetings have to happen, but they have to be open. What are the names and contact informations of the elected officials? Who are the administrative officials? How do building permits and zoning permits get applied for, and how does that happen? What are the audits that have gone on and include information about that? What are the contracts that are being signed, that are being bid on? Are those readily available for people to see what they are? Is there any part of the government that's doing its own lobbying? Is it funding an association? What are the public records where you can get FOIA requests or the equivalent on the state? And the taxes. Is there a central location for all information about fees and driver's licenses and tax documents? And this may sound very simplistic, but I would take that list that Illinois Policy has and go back through your local town, your county, and make sure these things are there. There's different organizations that look to see what level of transparency or sunshine is available on these areas. So be an advocate for these transparency standards. And when you go to the meetings, if you're seeing it's missing there, that's something you could bring up at a meeting and say, I've looked at the website. I see that these things aren't available to see which one of these 10, how close do we have? And they're going to want to make sure that they're being transparent. They're going to want to show that. And if they're being resistant, that may be a very interesting red flag for people to have to see. As in most things, we got to follow the money. And when you're looking through documents here, such as budgets, financial reports, treasurer's reports, got to see where taxpayer money is going. You can also cross-reference that with vendor lists, with campaign contribution data from your state board of elections. Do you notice that the money is going toward people who are good and big funders and donors? That's a huge red flag here. So follow the money. and understand where these things, where these contracts and bidding and things are heading to. State FOIA requests. These vary by state. Always follow up on requests that you make. Just don't think I'm going to send a letter, I'm going to submit something through a website. Just do it once. You got to follow up. You got to keep following up on this. There are places that have sample letters and resources of how I can write this, how I can make it the best request so I can get the resources I'm looking for. Each state is going to be slightly different on how a FOIA request goes. Familiarize yourself with those applicable laws and codes. Fill out the form and submit it. Follow up with the appropriate entities like the state attorney general or local press and media, freedom of information councils. Be persistent. Just sending out one letter may not just be enough. Reach out to pertinent nonprofit organizations who are looking to help with efforts like this to expose corruption and problems like that. Sunshine laws. These are, generally speaking, laws that guarantee public access to meetings when only a quorum of a group needs to be discussing public business. Do you have sunshine laws in effect in your town, in your locality, in your county, what have you? If you don't, maybe that's something you can advocate for, of why it needs to be an important thing to have these types of sunshine laws. They're going to generally require notices from agencies to give advance notice of all meetings, even an emergency meeting, to publish or post on their agendas in advance so we know what they're talking about. Again, going back to what the city of Bell was or wasn't doing there. If they decided not to do any of these things, or they put it out and people still didn't show up, we want to make sure that we're not having another city of Bell situation in your local area. How are the minutes being kept? Are there transcripts of all meetings that those agencies that are being kept that the public needs to know about? Those are the type of things that go into sunshine laws that we need to advocate for. You yourself can become a citizen journalist. And a citizen journalist now, it's easier than ever. Every one of us has some kind of smartphone, smart device with you that you're able to contribute to a website, start a blog, start a video blog. Social media is inadequate as a primary source, but it's great for transmitting information. So you want to be sure to get out that information as best as you can. So that could be starting with a video blog you have. It could be something up on YouTube. You could have your own blog, your own social media channel there. Find out about other people who care about the same issues as you. Be able to use that social part of social media to connect with others. Write letters to the editor, particularly on the local level. Everybody on there is looking for content, and you can have that kind of content. And you and a few friends can get together, eat some wonderful New York style pizza, and write some letters to the editor and get that published. And see if you have friends who are in government, who are public officials, who could follow up with that and say, I'd love to talk to everyone about transparency laws or pass these sunshine laws. Have your own meetings, get together, have other people who want to publish. Is there people who are in your group of friends, who are in your snowflake management model, who are good writers, who want to write and want to be out there and contribute in that way? That's something you need to look for and hold on to. So become a citizen journalist. If those people in the media right now, they need help. And this is something you could be contributing this as a citizen journalist to them to say, here are the facts that I found, laying things out so they can then take the ball and they can use all of the good journalism that they had learned in school and have applied in there. We can't just look at the media and say, well, everyone is against us. No one is on our side here. There are plenty of people who are looking to do the right thing. And if we connect with them, we can get these kind of things published. Again, the LA Times, certainly not a center-right publication, saw that that corruption that was going on in the city of Bell and published that. So there are media channels that are willing to help expose these type of things. We can put current events in a historical context. What are people talking about? You know, maybe you're just friends with wonky people who read white papers all day and thick philosophical tracts. But what are people in this kind of coffee shop talking about? What are they seeing is actually affecting them? Who are the people who are actually showing up to these public meetings? What are they talking about at that coffee shop? In social media platforms, you may have a local group to your town, a Facebook group. What are people actually talking about here? What is the thing that animates them and causes them to take action? Taking action could be a very scary thing, and people are like, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to get too in the way. I don't want to put myself forward here. And they may actually be scared of the blowback or the retaliation. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about different laws that are out there to protect people who are whistleblowers and that type of thing. When are the elections that are coming up? Is there something to help to galvanize people's minds around that? When tax day's coming, when big holidays are coming, what big decisions and big community events are going on? What are people talking about there? What does your community have a history of corruption? You know, unfortunately, when I mentioned before the Illinois Policy Institute, Illinois has a glorious history of corruption, and it's a terrible thing. But does your area like that? So are people either indifferent to it or saying, I want to get rid of this stereotype of our area here? Is this something that has happened before? You can use alerts on your phone or your computer to find newspaper archives, different Google alerts to flag what are going on in different articles that you could read here to get a historical context. If this is something that motivates you, that you want to be an activist here, well, you're maybe not a normal person here. So what are the regular people out there talking about, and trying to listen to them first instead of trying to fill in the blanks for how they should be thinking. As I mentioned before, you need to work with the media, whether it be newspaper, television, radio, on the web, different social influencers. We can't just say, well, gosh, I'm on the center right and nobody in the media is ever going to listen to me. That's factually not true. Have a real relationship with members of the media on a personal level. Know that they're human beings as well. You need to be reliable. You need to be humble. You need to be selfless when you're talking to them. Vilifying the media isn't going to help. It's not going to help talk to them. It's not going to help build a relationship with them. Compliment them when it's warranted. If they do a good job, write a note and say, maybe even a handwritten note. You did a great job on that story. That's wonderful what you did. A big fan of your work. Send that in. That's going to stand out to people. If you're dealing with lawmakers just in general, and a lawmaker happens to do something great, they're used to getting hate mail. They're used to getting yelled at. But what they're not used to is getting a thank you note. And if you send that, they're going to remember you. They're going to remember your organization. It's something critical and applies also with the media. Understand it's a big platform, what the media is. And it's not your job to run the story exactly from your perspective. But you're going to give them that information to help them to get that information they need and hope that you can get it out there. But it is your job to help convince them of why this is newsworthy and what is really going on. And that's something that you can do here. Again, understanding your why and sharing your why with them, and even understanding their why. Why did they get into journalism? They may say, well, I wanted to make sure I was helping the little guy. And that they were, well, this is exactly where the little guy is getting stepped on because of this, that, and the other thing. You can connect your why with their why, and maybe that could be a powerful binder to help them to work with you in the future to make sure when something goes wrong that you're ready. Contact the authorities if necessary. And don't just contact one authority, contact multiple authorities. This may be something that your local police department needs to hear about, your county police, your state police. It could go all the way up to the FBI. Don't just wait for one authority, contact most. Many, including the FBI, have anonymous whistleblower lines that's readily available online. You can see that not only nationally, but they may have regional whistleblower lines that people can reach out to that are anonymous, that can help to protect you as you're helping to expose what's going on that is untoward in your area. As I mentioned before, though, there are a bunch of whistleblower protections. The United States really is one of the great leaders in the world about protecting whistleblowers. And there are whistleblower laws that are on the state level here that vary state to state here. But there's four in particular nationally. The False Claims Act, that was something that was enacted in 1863 and has really come back around as it was the America's first whistleblower law and one of the strongest whistleblower laws we have in the United States. Within the Dodd-Frank Act, which was passed after the 2008 financial crisis, it created multiple whistleblower agencies in places like the U.S. Securities Agency and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. There's an IRS whistleblower law that can help to expose tax fraud, which even may provide a financial incentive for you to help out in that. So being a watchdog is something that's critically important to the survival of our free government. Again, to quote Madison, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. But if angels were to govern men, neither external or internal controls on government would be necessary. We need to be that external control on government. We need to be the ones who watch the watchmen. And one of the most important things that everybody has in their life is really three things: their time, their talent, and their treasure. And throughout tonight, I thank you for your time, which is your most precious resource because you'll never get it back. So thank you for spending your most valuable resource, your time, listening to me discuss here at GLA Presents. Please go to glatraining.org to find out about new trainings or to email us about potential trainings that could be coming to your area or to request trainings here. And back here on YouTube, the first Monday of the month at 7:30, we talk about insight to actions. The second Tuesday, we have how-to conversations at 7 p.m. And the third Monday, just like tonight, we have Grassroots Leadership Academy Presents at 7:30. So again, my name is Chris Steele, and thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.